Heavy-handed. The 666. Well, 111 is that's a lot of fertilizer. You get them the lower. Now, if I can't find 666, 888, 10, 10, 10, guess what? I'll grab a bag of citrus fertilizer. Because that's like 688. Guess what? Plants won't notice the difference that much. You know? We're not, so you get one less tomato. Big whoop. You have 10,000 acres and each plant produces one less tomato. That's a big whoop, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a lot of it, there's a difference between textbook, get the highest yield, and I didn't even notice that it was one fewer tomato out there. So keep that in mind. Now, the bag will tell you what's on there. It may also contain secondary nutrients and the micronutrients like iron and things like that. Most of our fertilizers are water soluble, including granular, unless it is labeled slow release or organic. Now, when I say organic, the plant really doesn't care if you use organic fertilizer or you use stuff that was worked up in the lab by humans. The plant does not care. Who might care? You. So it's up to you which way you want to go. Plant doesn't care as long as it gets its nutrients, okay? So keep that in mind. Where's my remote? Typical of my own home. I can never find the remote. My remote control was sitting on my couch the other day, and it kind of went like this, and it exploded into 50,000 pieces. And I was like, I could glue that together. And then I called up the White House, and they said, oh, you can get a new one for free. Oh, was I relieved. But I had never seen a remote control just kind of come apart. I nearly came apart, too, for the record. You think that's funny? No, your sense of humor is kind of off, guys. All right, so there's fertilizer, granular. You can also use liquid. Who's done liquid like Miracle-Gro or Peters? All right, perfectly good products, do not get me wrong. The only problem with Peters or Miracle-Gro or the store generic, most people do not use it frequently enough. You need to use liquid about every 2 weeks. Yeah, granular is about every 4 to 6 weeks. So if you're using liquid about every 2 weeks,
Daily.
not who said daily? Oh gosh, you're gonna have. Okay, let me back up a second. Some people will use a very diluted version of a liquid at like 1/4 strength or 1/8 strength, and they'll do it daily. But that is a very slow dose. If you use 1 tablespoon to the gallon or whatever's on the package daily, what'll happen is the salts in the fertilizer, because fertilizer is salt-like. What do you think happens to plants and salts? Yeah, they can burn the roots and they die. So again, follow the directions, but liquid about every 2 weeks. So most people with liquid don't use it enough. And the other problem with liquid is when you're using it that much, that gets expensive, doesn't it? So I much prefer granular. The only time I really use liquid is in containers where I have a small soil volume. That's just me. I mentioned all this pretty much, and it's in your fact sheets. Again, granular about every 4 weeks to 6 weeks. In the winter, you can stretch that out to about every 6. You can apply it to the long side of the row, on the edge of the root zone. If it's organic or slow release, you can do it less often. Some people will buy the dynamite or Osmocote type products. Who's ever used those? Okay, and you buy in a bottle, usually a plastic bottle. Looks like you got BBs in there. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. About 20 bucks for a little bottle. Kind of expensive, but it lasts for many, many weeks. Now, sometimes you'll see it says last 6 to 8 months. Who's seen that on the bottle? Then you turn it over and it says, if the soil temperature is 65 degrees, or whatever. What are the soil temperatures like when we're putting in veggies in September? About 90, or 85. So you'll see on the bag when the soil temperature is 90 degrees, like it is in September, it only lasts 3 months, or whatever. Depends on the product. So read that carefully if you get those kind of products. There is corn, for example, and of course as it grows you reapply. Now some people incorporate, and I have seen people going down to the depths of the earth incorporating the fertilizer. Remember, where are the plant roots anyhow? Right at the surface. So what good is it putting it down 3 or 4 inches? You're losing some of the uptake. by the plant. So near the surface you can scratch it in. That's a good time to do weed control as well with like a garden hoe or whatever. Weed control. All right, we have the typical cultivation, you know, garden hoe, grub hoe, the garden weasel, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. You don't know the garden weasel? Remember that thing? I've seen on TV? Okay. Hand pulling. We've done that. Who's done that? Okay. Mulches. I'll talk about mulches again. I was asked at break, what about free mulch? You get what you pay for. Well, but again, it can vary from batch to batch, day to day, scoop to scoop. So it depends on what people are putting in the waste stream and what is being ground up by your municipality. So if you are saying, oh, I'm going to save the earth and get rid of Brazilian pepper, that's a good thing, right? You are laughing at getting rid of Brazilian pepper. That is an invasive species.
I know. I'm laughing at saving the earth by doing it.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm glad the joke was good. Anyhow, so you decide to get rid of all that Brazilian pepper with all those pretty berries, and you throw it into the thing, and they come with that big claw or whatever, and then they grind it up, and it goes into the mulch stream. What just happened? Just spread. So where should that kind of thing go?
Garbage.
The garbage can. But some people don't know that. And most of the time the composting, depending on where it's coming from, they're not composting hot. You know, that 140, that's very difficult, where steam is coming off even in the dead of summer. So what happens is you can get weeds. So I usually recommend if you're going to get the free mulch composted, compost it good and hot. Or do what I prefer is when the neighbors have those big plastic bags coming about January, February into March, they're full of leaves, those are great mulch. Now you can use other things for mulch, pine needles you can use, oak leaves you can use, you know, ground, wood chips and things on that order. If you have seen a guy doing tree trimming work, a lot of times they'll take the, they have to take them somewhere and get rid of them and pay, but if you give them a little, you know, incentive to come to your house, you know what I'm saying, and he'll put them exactly where you want them. So that's one way to get some chips. Herbicides, there are very few herbicides labeled for veggies by homeowners. So in other words, don't. Especially during the growing season. Even if you think you're good at spraying Roundup, guys, it can drift. So don't use herbicides. In the off season, you could use non-selectives like Roundup. They don't stay in the soil very long. Or you could put down black plastic or something like that, or old pieces of carpet to keep the leaves from germinating in the summer. Don't compost perennial or weedy plants, you know, because the seeds usually don't get killed. And try to keep the garden weed-free in the off-season. And that's easy to say and hard to do, isn't it? Especially when you're getting 20, 30 inches of rain from the end of May or early June till, you know, September or thereabouts. Straw could also be used, but a lot of people will see oak leaves and get panicky. What's the big panic that most people have with oak leaves around their plants? Acid. Well, okay, not the stuff from the 60s apparently. But we're talking they reduce the pH of the soil or make it more acidic, right? Well, rule of thumb, your soil, if it's sandy, is usually alkaline, usually, the opposite of acid. And most plants prefer to be on the acidic side of the pH scale anyhow. And you could maybe correct this with a bit of lime. So by and large, oak leaves are not going to be the big problem that people perceive it to be. Usually they're there, they're free, they make good mulch, and at the end of the season you turn them in. All right, sometimes it gets cold in this burg. You thought you moved to Gilligan's Island, some of you, didn't you, when you moved to Florida? Who thought it'd be nice and tropical here? Oh, come on. Yeah, we're not tropical, are we? We're subtropical, and depending on where you live, closer to the coast, you're warmer. If you're by a big body of water, you're a little warmer. If you're in Dade City, Zephyrd Hills, you're a little cooler. Anyone with those cool spots? Hernando County folks, you're a little colder. You know, so you guys know your area better than I do, but we do get frost. We usually get a freeze every so often as well. So at some point, you're going to have to protect your tomatoes or your strawberries or whatever plant. So be prepared. This is the time of year when people aren't thinking about cold protection. And guess what's really cheap and available at the thrift shops?
blankets.
Old blankets. I buy my plant covers in the summertime because people look at that heavy wool blanket and they go, that's the last thing I want right now. But guess what? You get them nice and cheap. Or people have them at yard sales. You can also use sheets. It doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be functional. So here's a row of something that's cold sensitive. There's some thin wall PVC bent over, and what's going to happen on a cold night, you would pull a piece of cloth over that. Why do I want something like PVC or bamboo stakes over the plant like that?
You don't break the plant.
Somebody said break the plant. Well, most of the row covers are not heavy enough to break the plant usually, and we're not usually going to get snow on it. Possible, I suppose. I don't want to be here if it snows. It nearly did a few years ago, if you remember. You want to keep the cloth or the cover off the foliage. Why would that be? Well, yes, they can get wet and then they touch even more, but wherever the cover touches, it's kind of like the days when you were further north and you put your hand against the window when it was cold. What happened to the cold? Went right into your hand, right? But if you have it a few inches away, you don't have that direct transfer of the cold to the plant tissue. So you want to keep the cover off of the desirable crop. Here's a piece of a wood stake, and here's some cover. Now, frost cloth. Who's heard of frost cloth? All right, it is not magical, for the record. You know, you name it frost cloth, and it's like, well, that must be something magical. No, all it is a non-woven material. It's more like a handy weight, non-woven. The beauty of it is it's very lightweight, and you can usually get it in, you know, wide widths and big long rolls if you want. So you can get a 100-foot roll by 10 feet wide or whatever. You can cut it to size or whatever. Downfall of it is it's lightweight. What happens to lightweight things? They can blow away, so you got to weight down the edges somehow. So you balance the force of the two. I prefer a cover that's permeable versus plastic for a couple reasons. If I have a plastic over this and the next morning the sun comes overhead, what happens to the plants? They cook. That's one thing. And plastic, whenever it touches the cover, really burns the plants or they freeze out. So I much prefer a permeable cover. And if it lets light through, like these do, I have been known to leave things in place for several days. Why? A, I'm lazy. B, sometimes I get up early enough and it's still below freezing before I get to work. You know, usually it's coldest right before the dawn, right? So I don't want to lift off the cover at 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning when I'm about ready to head out the door because it's still below the freezing. So I'll just leave it in place. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it gets really cold and covers only work for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 degrees of cold protection. So some people add additional heat by using large, old-fashioned Christmas bulbs, not the LEDs.
If you ask your thrift shops ahead of time, they
Oh,
get
thrift
those.
shop.
They usually throw them away. So
They throw them away.
So just ask
so you
them.
get them for free at a
Yeah.
thrift shop? There's a tip I didn't know.
because they just throw them away. Nobody wants them.
Oh, free. I shouldn't have mentioned that loudly. Ask nicely, but let me have some too. Anyhow, the point is, they do work to throw heat. Some people will have other electric light bulbs, the incandescent, which are getting harder and harder to find, as you know. But make sure it's an outdoor bulb. What would happen to an indoor bulb if moisture hit it? Make sure your bulb holder is designed for outdoor use. Your extension cord is for outdoor use. And gentlemen, I'm looking back at you. Whatever you do, do not put a space heater in the yard. You laugh. When I was in Hernando County about a decade ago, some gentleman came in and said he had a citrus tree and he had a cover on it and he put a space heater under to keep it warm. And I said, what time of the morning did it go up and smoke? And he said, funny you should say that. He said, I woke up to about 3 o'clock in the morning to realize that the cover had started on fire and the tree burned down. You think I'm making that up, don't you?
No.
No, that's a true story. So, gentlemen, we are not trying to keep it hot under that cover. We're trying to keep it above the freezing point. the women of the room, please remind your gentleman that you live with or know very well of this fact in a few months when they forget and go, gee, a space heater is a good idea.
Floodlights are a problem too.
Floodlights can get too hot too, yes. You can make covers out of milk cartons, cut the bottom out, and keep the cap because when it's cold, you put the cap on. When it warms up, you take the cap off. They're great. You can make covers out of maybe some boards, or this is that flexible, what is that? Corrugated roofing material, fiberglass. You know, bends, here's a couple of stakes. On a cold night, you would put some boards or something in front of it to keep out the cold. You know, you've got to figure out what that'll be. If it's real cool, I suppose you could throw a blanket over top for insulation. I've never done that, but again, that could be done. Water. How many of you have seen the perky morning reporter on one of the local news channels out in the strawberry fields of Plant City? And they're with Farmer Joe in Plant City, and here's a perky morning reporter going, here we are in the strawberry fields of Plant City, and Farmer Joe's been here all night with his strawberry crop watching the sprinklers. How did it go, Farmer Joe? Right? And then the microphone gets under Farmer Joe's nose, right? Thank you, perky morning reporter. We're good. It was cold. It was a good night. And everything went well. And then the reporter gets the microphone back to you in the studio. Inevitably, at some point, the perky morning reporter says, "If igloo of ice has protected the crop." Who has heard that term? Igloo of ice protected the crop. No, it did not do a thing. So the next logical question was, why are they putting out water if ice is not protecting the crop? That is an excellent question. That is 10 gold stars. As you know, they're not worth anything, but you got 10 gold stars. So why are they doing it?
The motion.
Motion? Not the motion of the water. Because when water goes from liquid to solid, it gives up heat. It's called the heat of fusion if you're a physics person or science-minded in some way. And as long as a farmer is the conversion of liquid water to solid water, heat is being given up. What happens when the sprinkler quits turning? Not good. That's why is Farmer Joe out in the field all night instead of in bed? He's watching sprinklers turn, literally, all night long. Because they like to ice up, and then what do?
Stop.
They stop, so what does he do? He bangs on them to break off the ice. So, what are you going to do on a cold night in your yard, if you're a veggie gardener or not, and we're going to get a frost as predicted? You're going to go to your sprinkler system and do what? Turn it off completely, because it won't protect your plants. And yes, we do that. It's very, very difficult. This is best for the professional. All right, let's talk about a few gardening problems before we say good night, or good morning, or good afternoon. Not all problems in your vegetable garden are caused by living factors. What are some non-living factors that could be a problem in your veggie garden? Water problems. Good.
Soil pH.
Soil pH possibly, yes. Heat. Heavy rain. Lack of rain. Cold. What else? Your husband or whoever was heavy-handed with fertilizer. Then again, he is a living thing. But it was a non-living thing that caused the problem directly, or is that indirectly? I never understood those variables, but it's one or the other. But it could be other things like that. So just because you see a problem doesn't immediately mean it's a bug or a disease. Sometimes it gets too hot for those cool season crops. This happens to be a cold crop cabbage, who knows what Brussels sprouts, it doesn't matter. It gets hot, it all of a sudden decides to flower. That's the end of its life cycle because it's an annual. Sometimes some plants don't have enough leaves and the fruit actually sunburns. So that is a non-living factor. It's the sun that burns the fruit of the zucchini. That would be hard to tell from the photograph, but sometimes we get crazy weather, we get hail. And it pelts the plant, and what happens? You're going to get damage to the fruit, in this case a tomato. This is a common one, tomato blossom drop. And this happens on our tomato plants when the temperatures are above 80, 85. So we plant our tomatoes at the end of August, early September. Well, you're saying, Jim, that's over 80, 85. But they're growing for about a month. What starts happening in October? Starting to cool down. That's when they're going to start setting those tomatoes. So we're bypassing that heat then, and then they're going to set in October, November. Then we're hoping to get the crop off by about December, early January. But we also plant these in the spring, these warm season crops, about the end of February. Like February, it's going to be cold sometimes. Well, February, it gives us March, April, May, into June. When does this tomato have a chance of setting fruit? Well, January, probably not, right? February, not. March, yeah, it's starting to get warm. April is a good time, but what happens starting in May? Getting too hot. So people who plant it too late because they're thinking, well, bypass the cold, what happens is a lot of these plants are flowering very profusely, but they won't set. Some set better than others, like cherry tomatoes, but the larger fruited tomatoes do very poorly in the heat for their fruit set. So that's an abiotic factor, a very common problem. I get calls all the time. I have zucchini squash, patty pan, winter squash, watermelon, etc. I'm not getting any watermelon, squash, whatever. Some of the problems can happen is the plants have separate male and female flowers. Did you know that? How many of you knew that? How many of you kind of vaguely remember that from maybe, okay, if you vaguely remember, how many of you, that's a new thing? Okay, so they have separate boy and girl flowers. Which one is going to produce the fruit?
Female.
The girls. Because only the girls get pregnant, guys. Right? Some of us are thankful for that fact, right? All right, the point I'm trying to make is you may see a bunch of flowers like these here.
Beat it well.
Now, it's closed, but let's say they're open, and here's a stem.
Fingernail on
That's a boy flower. Well, I had a whole bunch of flowers. Well, if they were boys, how many fruits are you going to get? Nada. Why is that? Because boys don't get pregnant. Now, the female flower, this one's closed, but right below the female flower will be a miniature itty-bitty. This looks like a yellow crookneck squash. It could be a little patty pan. It could be a little cucumber or any other number of cucumber family members. And a lot of people will see these little itty-bitty, teeny-tiny little fruits, and the flowers open, and they'll say, I had the fruit there, and all of a sudden something bit it off or ate it off. I don't have it anymore. What can happen there? All right, gentlemen, if you don't pollinate the girl, girls, if you're not pollinated, what happens?
No babies.
No babies. Okay, you do understand biology. Good. So, there are several problems there that can happen. Boy flowers don't get pregnant. The girls may not have a boy anywhere nearby. They don't form the fruit. Or we lack bees. Now, how do we attract bees to our landscapes? Bright, gaudy flowers. Good. So, or if you're having this problem, you're seeing some boy flowers and a whole bunch of girl flowers, what you can do is peel the petals off and you can actually hand pollinate or play bee. Has anyone done that? Yep, you can do that. Another non-living factor, usually we see this in the spring more than in the fall, but it's called blossom end rot of tomato. The stem end is here, that's where it was attached to the plant, and the bottom is always distinctly brown or blackish and kind of sunken. This is not a disease. This is a lack of calcium. That's why if you've ever read some of these books that say put a Tums tablet next to it. Have you ever read one of those books that say Tums? What is Tums?
Calcium.
Calcium carbonate, aka chalk. That's why it tastes chalky. We call that lime in the gardening world. So at the time of planting, you put a spoonful of lime around the plant, not tons and tons. About halfway through, another spoonful or two, and you give it enough calcium to prevent this. But by the time you see the problem, guess what, folks?
Too late.
Too late. So what do I do if that happens? I let it ripen, and I get out my knife, and there it gets cut off, gets tossed in the compost pile, and you eat the top. Hey, you know what happens to the ugly stuff before it hits the grocery store? Got turned into tomato paste and tomato sauce and everything else. V8 or whatever. Let's talk a couple of bugs. What time do we have?
Aphids.
Okay, we're doing good. We've got a couple of bugs. Things to be on the lookout for. If you're growing potatoes, you get Colorado potato beetles. They also go on some beans as well. But you're more likely to occur aphids or spider mites. There are some other stink bugs are a big problem. They like to poke into your tomatoes and cause them to deform. We'll also get some other things like whitefly along the way. Aphids are pretty generalist. They'll go after any plant with soft succulent growth. You can see them here. They're kind of blackish or brownish in color, but they could be green, they could be yellow, they could be almost mahogany, they may even be almost a burgundy color. There are several different colors. They poke in the plant, they suck out fluids, and their numbers grow very, very quickly. Now, without going into a lot of insect control details, you don't need cannonballs to kill small insects, folks. Why do I say this? Because people say, can you recommend something good and strong that's going to kill them? You don't need this big, huge honking cannonball to kill this small thing. Soapy water does a great job on aphids. Now you can make your own, or you can buy it. It's up to you. Now this one, if you did not know what that was, that is obviously something wrong with that, but this is whitefly damage, happens to be on a squash. By the time you see the damage that far along, guess what?
It's gone.
It's too late. But most people don't do this. They don't monitor, scout, or look at their plants that often. And if they do look, they kind of walk by and go, okay, where are insects going to be primarily? Underneath. So every so often, peek underneath. Now, depending on the insect, they may start life off as one shape and then become another shape. Can anyone think of an insect that starts life as one shape and ends up its life cycle in a different shape? Butterflies. Okay, but whiteflies, what do they look like when they're adults? White with wings. But it was the immatures that don't look anything like that that are feeding on the plant. The white flies as adult with wings, what do you think they're doing? They're doing a lot of That's right. It happens in nature. So managing some pests. Timely planting things at the right time. We have fewer insect problems. That helps greatly. Some varieties are naturally resistant to insects, or like nematodes, which are not an insect but another pest. Scouting and hand picking. If you see one tomato hornworm, what do you do with one tomato hornworm?
Step on it.
And then done. But I know people that, get a pair of gloves. Get your neighbor to do it. Cut it in half with your clippers. But no, they got to schlep out the spray tank and mix them. And then kind of nuke it, until the thing is drowned in pesticide for one bug. For goodness sakes, if you're squeamish,
Stop gardening.
stop gardening. I didn't say that. Somebody else said that. All right. Beneficial insects. Not all bugs are bad. What? Really? Yes. Can anyone think of a good bug?
Ladybugs.
Everyone goes ladybugs. Okay, is that the only one you can think of?
Parasitic flies.
They're parasitic wasps. Bees. Praying mantis don't do a good job of getting any of our veggie pests, really? That's it? There are lace bugs, and earwigs are good, and a whole bunch of other insects are good. By and large, most insects are beneficial rather than harmful. And no, you do not have to purchase these. And I'll tell you why. You already have them in your garden if you would recognize them. Who was taught ladybugs are good as a kid, somewhere along the way? Yeah. And which one did you see? That red beetle with the black dots usually? And you had it at the end of your finger, mom or dad or grandma or somebody said, that's a good bug, it's a ladybug. What do they look like as an immature?
Gross.
Completely different. You're like, what? What do you mean they look completely different? Remember a butterfly? Before it was a pretty butterfly, it was a really ugly caterpillar that was eating on plants. Remember those days? No? Well, so learn your beneficial insects. Soapy water, oils, BT, neem oil. Those things are some things they have in your arsenal for insecticides. Read the directions. They're by and large very safe products to use. There are chemicals, but I usually recommend to use those as a last resort. And of course, if it says, do not apply within 2 weeks of harvest, can you put it on today and eat your corn tomorrow?
No. Unless you're Monsanto.
The point is, people go, well, do I really have to wait? I won't say anymore.
How do you want to live?
Read the directions and follow them. Always follow the directions. Guys, a teaspoon is not measured like this. And don't do what I might have done as a younger child for measuring spoons. Get your own set from the dollar store somewhere and mark it poison on there along with the measuring cup. Trust me, it'll be a lot better for you in the future in your life. Wear protective gear. If it tells you to wear rubber gloves, what do you wear?
Rubber gloves.
Yes, if it tells you to wear shoes and socks.
Wear shoes.
I would probably also have pants on, but if it says shoes and socks, yeah, wear shoes and socks. If it says wear a long sleeve shirt,
Wear a long sleeve.
no tank top, right? Okay. Store them properly, dispose of them properly, and wash and peel produce before eating. You knew that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good. We'll go past that. We'll go past that. And final thing to remember, you don't need cannonballs to kill small insects. Soapy water does a great job. So you don't need that to kill a bug. Just keeping that in mind. Let me turn over to a couple of questions because time is a friend and an enemy. Do we still have citrus trees for sale, Deb? Yes. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of others up in the greenhouse. What other classes do we have coming up, Serena?
Not yet. The next one will be in December.
We got a couple others. Let me stall for time and try to answer a couple of questions. I'm going to do this in some illogical fashion by starting on this side of the room, going kind of straight back. And okay, sir, in the blue T-shirt with the butterfly. Butterfly? Eagle. Eagle. I can't see. From here. Oh yeah, it's a butterfly. Got it. All right.
Just two brief questions. I've only been gardening for 2 years.
Okay, 2 years of gardening experience. That's okay.
Not very long.
Okay.
Worm on corn.
Oh.
And my watermelons keep breaking.
Okay. Two things. Know the particular pests each plant gets. You're going to get tomato hornworms on what? Tomatoes. You're going to get on corn something called corn earworm. So when the corn starts to come out and grow, you're starting to spray ahead of time. Because once it gets in that ear, you're out of luck fast. Because it severs the silk, you won't get anything. So people start spraying with things like BT, which is a natural insecticide. But you got to do it before the problem, or just as you start to see some damage on the leaves before the ears ever form. So watermelon, they can split when they get overripe, or we get, especially as the season gets in like June, we go from dry, in May, the rind gets so big, and also we get an inundating rain, and it pushes water into there. So it'd probably be better to plant it a little sooner and pick them a little earlier while they're ripe, because moisture fluctuations, it's very hard to even out the water in June, for example. Way in the back of the cheap seat.
It says on here, self-pollinating for tomatoes. Is that for all tomatoes?
Tomatoes are self-pollinating, but I still find that bees do a better job of getting the pollen from one part of the flower to another. Some people have used like an electric toothbrush to vibrate the flower. Because then the pollen goes from, where, here to the stigma. I don't know why you're laughing, I'm gonna leave it here. Yes, ma'am, in front.
Is there quality seeds? I've read somewhere get good quality seeds. Is there any different than, buying them at wherever, Home Depot, or ordering them from?
Well, Home Depot, Lowe's, they're gonna be selling very large brands like Burpee.
Right.
And Burpee's been a company around for 120 some years roughly. The thing is fresh and how they store them. A lot of times they're stored in very humid conditions and the heat out in the garden section. They're better in the air conditioned section of the store. So it's freshness. Now, some people don't want the hybrids, they want the heirlooms. Okay, nothing wrong with that, you can choose. But there are lots of catalogs, there's WW, everything is online.
One is probably as good as the other.
I'm not very fussy as long as they're fresh. Other people will disagree with that and want something, like in the heirloom. But, heirloom tomatoes are fine. They have more problems, diseases. I'm kind of going this way, I'll have to come back. Ma'am, near the back in the cheap, next to cheap seat, you. Yeah,
Okay.
pick me.
Epsom salts on plants. I understand it's a good fertilizer, and say you're soaking your feet in Epsom salts, and you say, what plant can I use that on?
Okay, Epsom salt. The very name tells you something right there, Epsom, but salt. What do we know about salt in plants? You have to be very careful. Now, it's not sodium chloride, but it has magnesium, which is one element necessary for plants. But depending on how much Epsom salt you put in the foot soak bath, if you put a quarter cup in a half a gallon and you put it on your tomatoes, that'll burn them up. You put a quarter cup in 5 gallons around a big, huge palm tree, probably won't damage it. So, it's like water. If you drink enough of it, it'll kill you. It's poisonous. You know what I'm saying? So be careful with Epsom salt, or dilute it down quite a bit. It is a nutrient, but it's only one of many. It's like vitamin C. Well, that's not the only thing we need. So it would only give one. Way in the back, cheap seat.
I have a question on using manure as compost.
Manure as compost, okay.
I form my cattle and horses with ivermectin. Okay, so can you speak to whether that stays in the manure and is in the soil?
I can't answer that question, I don't know.
Well, that's come up because.
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe our livestock agent can help you on that. Ivermectin is a insecticide used on animals, not on plants, so I'm not sure if it's longevity. But yeah, you got to deworm animals here, let's be honest. There was someone way in the back. Okay, ma'am.
On cucumbers, you know how that moth lays an egg in a flower? And then the egg hatches while the cucumber's forming? How do you prevent that?
I'm not sure what moth is in the cucumber.
Pickle worm or something like that?
Pickle worms are one, but
Squirrels out?
what you have to do is, okay, if it's pickle worm, it goes after not just cucumbers, but everything in the family. Anything in the family. So when the cucumber family members start finding out, people will start to monitor or prophylactically spray with like BT, a safe natural insecticide.
Would you spray the flower?
I spray the whole plant.
You're gonna spray it while it's flowering?
Yes, BT won't hurt bees, but I would do it at a time when the bee activity is low. BT is a bacterium that works on caterpillar physiology, and they're not caterpillars. Bees are a different family. So, hi Brenda, I didn't recognize who it was. Hello, in the middle. Striped shirt. I know you go, what am I
Going
wearing?
back to the seeds again.
Seed, yeah.
Big things about paying extra to get the organic seed versus just getting any old seed.
Okay, if you are an organic farmer doing it for over $5,000 of sale, and you want to be certified organic, you would have to get organic seed.
Right, but if you're just doing a small garden in your yard or your
My personal,
I mean, if I'm using organic fertilizer afterward, but for the seed, I'm thinking it's not gonna matter to start at that.
I personally don't go with organic seed because I'm cheap. And it's like, well, how much pesticide is in that is going to possibly cause me to go. Now, If it's a concern to you for any reason, I understand that, but I personally don't. But if you're doing it for sale, over $5,000.
When you say organic, once you've gone from seed to plant, that's when you can, because that's what you're really bringing into your fruit
Yeah.
that you're eating.
Yeah, when you're,
eating, right?
right, exactly. You know, if you're starting to spray 7, which is not an organically approved insecticide, if you're not either heeding the warning or you don't want that on your crop for whatever reason, then you better not use it, right? But, you know, some people's definition of organic can vary. You know, some people I know come unglued if you spray, you know, soapy water. You know, it's like, but those aphids, what about their soul? Sorry, I'll do penance, I guess. I'll spend more time in the fiery pit. In the kind of purple fuchsia.
Okay.
How's that?
You said something on the break to somebody else about, I think it was rain barrels and runoff.
Rain barrels and using on edible crops. I would be careful using rainwater off like an asphalt roof because there are chemicals in asphalt. A metal roof, probably not so much of a problem. He had a poly house, which is a plastic. I don't foresee that being a problem, but I wouldn't do it off of asphalt on an edible crop. Now, do people do that? Should you? I don't recommend it. So, most roofs are asphalt shingle. You may have tile or something else, you know, but most of us will have asphalt shingles, which have a plethora of who knows what, petro things. Way in the back, sir, you have a question, or? Okay. All right, I saw this poor woman right up here, or gentleman, I think, and then, who was over here? You have the lucky and unlucky position of being the last question.
Okay, you're
Yes, sir.
in the gardening.
Yeah, the gardening, sure.
Planting date.
Yes, sir.
For those of us who go from seed,
Mm-hmm.
the seed packets say date of seeding to fruit
Right.
or produce is so many days.
Yes.
How do you integrate that with the planting date?
Not sure I get the question. Let me try.
Okay, the seed packet says.
Yeah,
you'll
90
have
days
fruit in
from-
60 days.
Right.
The planting date has nothing to do with either of those.
Right.
So how many days ahead of planting date should you get your seeds in?
He's talking about transplants.
Yeah, you're talking, what specific plant are you talking about? Maybe that'll help.
Let's try tomatoes.
Okay, tomatoes. You want your transplants to be about anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks of age when they go in. So they go into the garden about the end of August to the early part of September. So if we back up 6 or so weeks, we're looking at July, early July
In
for
July,
seeding. So then I would have seeded those or eggplant in July, put them in at the end of August, early September, and then about, depending on which tomato, it's going to be 60 to 90 days roughly from that. Now, something like green beans, which are planted directly in the ground, it'll say, 60 days to harvest, but that's from planting because they're directly put in. But we would put those in about the early part of September as well, so September, October, November. So you're picking green beans around the early part of November into Thanksgiving until frost. So, did that answer it? I hope so. We can talk later. Serena?
One more question, the last question. I had a question earlier about composting, and this person was getting some flies in the composting, and wants to know if that is a problem and what to do about it.
All right, flies in compost tells me it's cold. They don't like hot compost. So the compost pile may have been hot and cooling off, has never gotten hot. Most of those things, they're eating organic matter for a living. So they're not a pest of plants. Okay? So depending on what it is, I can't tell you what fly it is, but also you may be getting certain flying creatures if you're putting in grease, meat, or bones. But you get other things besides flies.
These are like a larva, almost like
Yeah.
a maggot type.
Well, remember, going back to
Like
Insect
soldier fly.
101, life cycle. Some insects look the same from day of birth till they die. Cockroaches. Well, don't go, ooh, they're gonna outlive us, you know that. The point is, they look the same as a baby cockroach, ever so cute, to the big old thing running across the kitchen table at dinner time, you're going, ah, But flies start life out as a maggot, because they have complete metamorphosis. But the compost pile is cool, it's probably not harming you. Not going to harm you, it's not going to be a plant pest. They're eating organic matter of who knows what.
Of what? So don't throw out the compost, so use.
Oh, gosh, no, don't throw out the compost.
Okay.
No, but you might want to compost hotter, or put a cover over it where they can't get in, but they're not going to hurt you.
Okay.
Yeah, and little dirt won't hurt us. Serena, what are some of our upcoming classes?
I got actually, I'm going to go backwards a little bit. We got a plant sale coming up October 4th. It's big for us here. We offer a lot. Deb, is there anything that you know about specifically that we're going to be offering this year besides?
If you didn't get a flyer, there's a bunch here, and it gives a little overview. We have butterfly plants, we have trees, we have vines, we have quite a large selection. We have native plants, we have some veggies, usually the cold season, because the sale is October 4th, so we're looking for the cold season plants. We have an herb vendor coming in, a rose vendor, and an orchid vendor that will be in addition to the plants that we raise. And then we have a variety of citrus. We'll have hopefully lemons and limes and kumquats at the sale. You asked about that. So a good variety of plants, reasonable prices, and it starts at 9 o'clock. There'll be a line forming on that day, so be here, be ready, bring your wagon. And if you have any questions, I'll be here.
Did everybody hear that? Okay, good. Okay, great. Yeah, it's a great event. Gets bigger each year. But we have also something going on at Home Depot. This will be the 27th. All these flyers are on the table, but I just want to reiterate. September is Saturday, 27th, identifying mistakes. That's always a good one.
Bring your own.
Go to the bag and add
Which Home Depot is the question?
on 19. This is Port Richey.
It's on 19.
US 19, Port Richey, Home Depot, 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning, 27th of September. We've got flyers over here too. Okay, these are a couple of Land O'Lakes. This one? Okay, August 9th.
That's next weekend.
Next weekend. We have one here too, in June. Next year, actually, we're going to be doing our children gardening activity seminar, or gardening day in May. Land O'Lakes is doing theirs this year. It's August 9th, next weekend, gardening activities for children. So bring the children, the grandkids, your business kids, bring them all.
Yes.
Okay, we got, first one, this is both Hudson Library. Everybody knows where that is, corner of Beatty and
5A.
5A. I knew I was going to do that wrong. 5E and Liberty Roads. Drip irrigation, it's on a Tuesday, August 5th. Again, it's over here, drip irrigation. So if you want to follow up with some things you want to know about that. Also another one Tuesday, September 2nd. Hudson again, and hydroponics. That's good. Maybe we do that one over here too sometime. We do ours on a Saturday. They do theirs on Tuesday. So these are just a couple things to keep in mind if you want to follow up on some of the other activities. And we're going to do a drawing. Deb, do you want to pick out a citrus tree? We're going to do another one first. We're going to do the citrus second. We're going to look at your
Everyone get a ticket?
Ticket.
Ticket? All right. This one is for, it is a herb keeper. And we have some parsley seeds. And we have some tomatoes in there.
I'm gonna stop this.
Going with the theme, aren't we? A hot